fullness of God. There are going to be people that are going to come out of old, dead, dry, stale, religious places that don't know God. There's whole churches that meet, they don't know God. They don't even want to know God because they have God all figured out. They have God all worked out. They know what God would do, wouldn't do, couldn't do, can't do, won't do, don't want to do. They've got God all worked out and they're dead. And we don't want to enter into that place. We don't want to live in that place. We don't want to take on that attitude. We want to throw off religious attitudes and how we know how to do things. We know how to do things. We've got it all worked out. They told me how to do that in seminary. We know how to do that. We've got God all worked out. And God can't get in the place. God can't get in the place. Sometimes we're like that in our life. God can't even get in because we got Him all worked out. We've got Him in our slot. We've got Him pegged in. We know God. This is how God is. God wouldn't do that. You know, the supernatural things that God does. I believe some of the stuff is supernatural, freaks people out. But a wonder makes you wonder. We want signs and wonders, but we want to be able to hermeneutically, theologically, we want to be able to understand that with our head. And if it gets outside of my realm of understanding, it can't be God. Amen. So we put God in the little peanut shell inside our brain. And we say, this has to be God. Listen, there's things in the Word we haven't seen. People will do that. But it's not in the Word, sister. Oh, for real. So you've got all the revelation of all the Word. Let me just clarify it for my own understanding. You have all the understanding of all the Word. Now, I'm not talking about buying into false doctrine, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about God wanting to do some things that's going to astound people that you and I have never heard about before. When we first had in 2000 or 2001, somewhere in there, church was new, and somebody invited me to a meeting, and I went to this meeting, and in this meeting, this man, he talked very intelligently. He was a very good teacher of the Word. And he wasn't flaky, he wasn't weird. He was a very good teacher of the Word. But all of a sudden, this gold dust, he started talking about this gold dust stuff. And I knew God had sent me to this meeting. I didn't know anything really about the gold dust. But he called me up, and he called me up, picked me out of everybody. He called me up, said, do you see that underneath that chair? And I looked, and it was like this little tiny color underneath the chair. And it just zoomed out in my face. And I said, he said, do you see that? I said, I do. He said, what color is it? And somebody around me, I think, said aquamarine. I was like, well, I would have never said that word, but that's exactly right. I would have said like aqua or turquoise or whatever. And so from that time on, God began to do this crazy thing in my life. And He began to, somebody came to a meeting at my house. I was having a few meetings at my house. They came and they put this, bookmarker in my face. And it was all covered with this sparkly stuff. And I said, you have a pretty glittery bookmarker. And they said, oh, have you heard up in Virginia, the campgrounds in Virginia, that there's this gold dust and it's raining down on everybody. And I remember thinking, that's what I need, an apparition of Mary and some sparkles. Wow. I thought, I got enough battle as it is without weirdness. And that was just my thought. Keep it away from me. I don't want to know about it. And then, I don't know if it was that same girl, somebody gave me a book. And they gave me this book. I can't even remember the name now. Something about the glory. And so I put it in my briefcase. And I traveled somewhere to preach. And I was going to travel somewhere to preach, and I reached back to get I didn't carry my briefcase a lot those days. And I reached back to get it, and that book was in there. And I was like, oh no, I borrowed this book from this lady, and I better read this book, or, at least I'm going to look through it. I'm going to act like I read it. Don't y'all act like you ain't never done that. I'm going to read enough that I can say I read it, but I'm not really going to read it. That was my plan. And I opened that book up, and the Holy Ghost got a hold of my heart. And I read that book through, and it ended up as I was finishing that book, I prayed this prayer to God, and I said, I don't care if you paint me green and make me glow in the dark. I want everything you are doing. I don't care if it makes me weird. People already think I'm weird, so I don't care, and I want everything you're doing. And, you know, over time, without going through the whole story, I was sitting there one night, and I think I was reading the second book by this particular man, and he was telling all these stories about this gold dust and what was happening. People were returning to the Lord. There was a guy that was shopping in like a store, probably Cooks. And so he was shopping in this store, and he asked somebody for help, you know, that worked there, and said, I'm looking for such and such. And as they were standing there talking to him, he began to glitter. His whole body began to glisten and glow. And they were like, what is that on you? And he was like, I don't know, because he couldn't see his face, you know. And so then he began to realize what was happening, and he told them it's the glory of God. The guy repented. He was a backslider. He came back to Christ. I mean, there was all kinds of things that, you know, stories. I can't remember all of them now. It was years ago. And all these stories and everything. So I'm reading this book one night in the middle of the night, and I'm reading my second book, and I just read this story about these paramedics and what happened with these paramedics and everything, and this gold dust came. And so I'm sitting there, and I just start to tell the Lord, it's not fair. I said, it's not fair. That paramedic read one book, and he had this manifestation. I've read 2. It's not fair. Now, you know, the funny thing is that God will be trying to get something to us, and before it's over with, we think it's our idea, we're mad at God that we don't have it.
Right.
Because I didn't believe in it. And then I'm starting to believe in it. And at one point, I said to the Lord, I said, and I'm just using this as an example. There's all kinds of signs and wonders, but I'm just using this as an example. But I was praying one day, and I said to God, I said, well, if this gold dust is really you, I want to see it in the Word. And you know how you ask God a question, but you don't think He's going to talk? It was one of those times, because I thought, well, He's not going to tell me anything. But I said, if it's really you, I want to see it in the Word. And He instantly said the Mount of Transfiguration. I said, huh? He said, the Mount of Transfiguration, go read it. So I went to read it. And it said in the Mount, when Jesus was there, He was transformed. He was transfigured. It says His countenance was altered. It doesn't say how. And it said His clothes began to glisten so white as no launderer could get them that white. Well, I looked up the word glisten. It means to glitter.